Okay, looks like we're on.
Looks like it.
Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the October 14th, 2020 Mercer Island Arts Council regular video meeting. I'm Erin Vivian, Chair of the Arts Council. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, tonight's Arts Council meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast live via Zoom. It will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff Sarah Bluvas and Ryan Daly, Council Member Liaison Salim Neese may be joining us, and other staff members are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members may be listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. So welcome to all, and thank you for joining us tonight. Board members, please ensure that your microphones are turned on for the roll call. Since this is the first time the board is meeting since February, I want to note that we currently have two positions vacant. Matt Loam chose not to seek a second term, and Damian Schwedal resigned at the end of September. Will staff please call the roll?
Okay, Anu Meha. So can you unmute and say present or here, Anu Meha? We'll keep going. I'll come back to you. Amy Barnes.
Here.
Okay. Eric Gordon. Shishi Shakes.
Present.
Suzanne Scone.
Here.
Gayleen Vaden.
Here.
And Erin Vivian.
Here.
Okay. All right, Anu Meha, do we have you back? You were a little shaky before. I can see you. It's so funny. I can see you moving around. I can hear you now. Great.
Okay.
Okay, that's the roll.
Thank you, Sarah. Board members, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, I want to suggest a few rules to help the meeting to run smoothly. If a board member has a question, please use the raise hand feature. I will do my best to recognize board members in the order in which hands are raised. Everyone will be asked to limit himself or herself to one question and to one clarifying question if necessary, so that each board member has a chance to ask a question before the next board member is given another chance to ask a question. Please be mindful of your microphone and please keep it on mute while you're not speaking to limit background noise. And for the benefit of those listening over the telephone, please identify yourself when speaking. And welcome back, everyone. I know we've been on a long pause, so it's really nice to see everyone's faces, even if it's not yet in person. I want to thank you for continuing to serve on this council and for offering the community your time tonight. I know this pandemic has touched all of our lives in different ways and has presented challenges that no one expected, so your continued support of arts and culture on Mercer Island is greatly appreciated. We now move to our first item of business to review and consider approving the February 12th, 2020 minutes. Board members, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 12th, 2020 meeting?
So moved. Gayleen, so moved.
Suzanne will second.
Is there a second?
Suzanne will second.
Okay, so I think there's a motion by Gayleen and a second by Suzanne. So the minutes are approved. Well, no, actually we need to conduct the roll call vote.
Do the roll call again.
Board members, please turn on your microphones. Trying to go off script there, can't do that. Okay, Sarah, can you please do the roll call for the
Yes.
approving of the minutes vote?
Yes. Anumeha?
Yes.
Okay. Amy Barnes?
Yes.
Eric Gordon? Shishi Shakes?
Yes, approve.
Suzanne Scone?
Yes.
Gayleen Baden?
Yes.
And Erin Vivian?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. So now the motion passes and the minutes are approved. Okay, so the second item of business is an update on city operations and the 2021 and 2022 budget process. We welcome EOC Small Business Liaison Sarah Bluvas and EOC Operations Chief Ryan Daly to provide the update.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate that. Glad to see you all. I just have to say that it feels really good to sort of get back into the swing of seeing people and moving forward with some of the city business. So let me share my screen real quick. All right, can you all see that? Yes.
Ken.
Okay.
Yep.
So where I
Ryan,
Hey, Ryan.
yes.
You're in notes version,
Oh,
so.
it's on. I've got too many screens going here. Is that still pulling up notes?
Yeah, so you
Yeah, so
want to
if you click on
uncheck,
display
so if you go,
settings.
Oops.
yeah, and uncheck use presenter view, so go back.
Where do you?
Actually, you can even also check from here, from display settings, you can select which view you want to share if you have multiple screens.
Yeah, let me. All right, talk me through that quickly, Sarah.
Okay, so uncheck use presenter view, where you see where it says monitors.
Monitors.
You're going, you're so close, to the right, to the right. Keep going, keep going, keep going. There you go.
Got it. Thank you. Still, you guys are still seeing that other screen, aren't you?
Yes, you're not seeing the presenter view.
How about now?
There we
Yes.
go.
Perfect. Okay. So just to kind of get us started, I promise I'm going to keep this at a high level, but if you do have questions, I'm happy to answer what I can. We are still, as many of you know, in what is a very long transition. So just to kind of rewind to where the Parks and Recreation Department was in the beginning of February, I was serving in the role of interim Parks and Recreation Director. Previous to that, I was in the role of Recreation Manager. Sarah was in the role of Arts Council, Arts and Culture Coordinator, to which we were transitioning to a Parks Project Coordinator position. And then Diane Mortensen was going to be serving as the staff liaison to the Arts Council. When everything happened with COVID-19, basically all of our recreation positions were laid off abruptly within about a week or two. Myself, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to take on a role that expires at the end of December of this year as the Emergency Operations Center Chief, what am I? Like the Operations Section Chief. I have the ability and to coordinate many things that we're doing in relation to the emergency for COVID, but also, gosh, it was windy the other day. So there's a lot of different things that kind of play into that from an emergency management standpoint. Sarah transitioned into the small business liaison position also out of the Emergency Operations Center. So we were retained through the end of this year. And then we're going to talk a little bit as we go forward about the presentation that City Manager Jesse Bond gave on September 22nd that lays out the proposed organizational structure. Again, this structure recognizes that the organization is in a significant point of transition. The priority of this structure is really to focus on the stability of Mercer Island's government. We're in a situation right now that we've had a lot of turnover, significant layoffs, staff members doing a lot of different things. The structure that's been put forward is really to button all of that up, to give us sort of a starting point that we can start to rebuild the organization. There's a focus on continuous improvement and efficiency. So you're going to see some things in this presentation on how we're trying things in a different way, implementing different procedures to make us more effective with the lean staffing model we have currently, or we're proposing, I should say. You'll also see in there the Public Works Department looks giant, and that's not a bad thing. We're strengthening the CIP team, those capital project managers. You'll see a slide in there that includes a number of them. I call that out because those are things that definitely significantly impact the Arts Council, and I believe can be a benefit not only to the Arts Council, but to a lot of our project management that needs to occur. The other part, and finally what's included in this, is succession planning. The Parks and Recreation Department, I'll just say I'll toot my own horn, we're very fortunate to have me. No, it's the fact that I've been here for 10 years and I've had the opportunity to learn a lot of different roles. Sarah, in her relatively short time here of a couple of years, has had the opportunity to jump into a number of positions. That's a real benefit for the Parks and Rec Department because we still have that institutional knowledge. Many other departments maybe didn't have that opportunity. And so this organizational structure will really point us in that direction to have that next person up, so to speak. So we don't miss a step and we continue with that efficiency, which is extremely important to all of us. You'll hear this term quite often, essential services. This is how it's sort of defined within the city of Mercer Island. Emergency response is obviously extremely important to us, and it's essential. Public safety, we all understand that. Roads, safe transportation, utilities, water, sewer, extremely important. Mental health services, we're seeing that right now with what YFS is providing to the community. The municipal court, that's a function that has to continue. And then you see parks and recreation, and it says limited next to that. What we've really focused on within the last 6-8 months, as well as where we're moving forward into the new year, is to focus on maintaining our assets. And so you look at our parks and they may not look as pretty as it breaks my heart to say, they don't look as good as they usually do, but we're really preserving them so that they can come back in the future. I think the other aspect with that, you could think of public art, maintaining that, making sure that we're managing and maintaining those assets that we have is extremely important. So we view that as an essential service as well. There's CPD, that's the planning section that includes permitting and different aspects of inspections and things like that. And then there's all of the internal support services, human resources, IT, finance, that keep this organization moving forward. So I don't want to dwell on this because it's a very sad number, but I will say that this shows sort of the FTE count. Now, I will call your attention down here to the Parks and Recreation Department. I'll speak to that for a second. You'll see in the upcoming proposed organizational structure that we're proposing 3.75 positions under the Parks and Rec Department. What that doesn't include, and you see right below that, is Public Works. We've moved our park maintenance team into the Public Works Department. So though that number looks much less, that's about 7 FTEs that have moved under the Public Works umbrella. And you'll see as we move forward that we've sort of renamed the Recreation Division to something different. These are the positions that were all eliminated. So when we publish this, if you want to go back or if you have any questions about who's here, who's not, this is a list. The highlighted yellow is all of the Parks and Rec positions that were eliminated. I mentioned Diane's position, Diane Mortensen as the Community Programs Manager. Sarah Bluvis's position was eliminated, as well as the Parks Project Coordinator. The Department Director position was also eliminated, as well as a number of other support staff within the department. I highlight this because primarily these are the types of position that support the Arts Council. So we're going to have to be talking as we move forward what resources we have available to support the Arts Council, as well as where we need to be in the future to make sure that we're offering the highest level of service we possibly can. As we move forward through this presentation, you're going to see some different colored boxes. I'm not going to go through them too much, but the different colors highlight different aspects. The EOC block there at the bottom, those are we'll call them the responsibilities that I currently have, as well as Sarah, as well as a number of other staff. We're anticipating that magically at the end of the year, the coronavirus isn't going to go away. So we're being proactive and being prepared to understand that a portion of the responsibilities of certain positions will need to have an EOC function associated with it. So I'll point that out as we move forward. I should also mention that specific to Sarah and I mentioned that our positions end at the end of the year. We will have the opportunity to apply for other positions that are available, that come available through this reorganization. So there's no guarantees of where either of us will end up, but we'll get to choose and apply for those positions when they open. So as I mentioned, Parks and Recreation is sort of, I don't want to call it dissolved, but it's been spread out across quite a few different locations or different departments. The functions and whatnot are something that are absorbed into different positions. We mentioned that this organization is in a sense of transformation. What I'm presenting right now doesn't necessarily is what is anticipated or what is being proposed for January 1st. I want to be clear that after that, part of the transition team's work specific to recreation will be, how do we rebuild that? How do we rebuild the resources, plan for the future, so that as we move through the year, we're bringing new or bringing back previous functions to be able to support where we were in the past. So in this example, I show the community planning and development department. I'll move this over here. You see 2 purple positions. Purple are positions that are being proposed to council to deliberate on. You'll see the economic development coordinator as well as a senior policy analyst. I call those out because I believe there's a direct correlation between the Arts Council. So I could see some work that will occur between those 2 positions as well as the Arts Council. You'll see the yellow positions, the operations transition team manager, that's very similar to the function I'm serving currently. And then you have the recreation division below that. And there's 2 positions proposed there in recreation and operations coordinators. Currently, we have a recreation and operations coordinator working about 3/4 time, Katie Herzog, and she is primarily doing our field rentals. She's bringing in revenue for us right now, and it's a big job, but she's doing that all on her own currently. The other position, the other recreation and operation coordinator position, that will be namely someone who will be helping to bring the community center back online. The community center is our revenue generator for the department, or once it's functional, will be the revenue generator for the department. So that gives us the opportunity to expand from there. And then you'll also see on the other side is the thrift shop, and that's also a revenue generating facility, and we have a 2.5 FTEs dedicated to that. The yellow boxes are positions that City Manager Bond has identified within her budget currently. So they're shown as funded. Council will approve the funding or not for that, but she's recommending those be included. The purple are suggestions that she's providing to council based on the planning sessions from the past that they've identified as a need. So then moving forward, I mentioned the Public Works Department being giant, and it's a monster. Our entire park maintenance team is now under that, as well as our natural resources team. Those of you familiar with Paul West, he is a CIP project manager. He would be housed in this team. This would be the project management area. One of the emphases that Jesse really has, and is completely agreeable, for years we have been putting CIP projects forward, and we never had the staff to manage them. I mean, it was beyond the workload that we could complete. This proposed organizational structure really provides the resources to get work done. And so that's, from a staff standpoint, that feels really good to see that that's being recognized to move projects forward. And I highlight that again because Arts Council often has public projects that need to get project managed. That's where these individuals will come forward. So as I mentioned, pulling from various departments, that's exactly what this scenario brings forward. So I do want to just highlight the different opportunities that we have. Obviously, this has been a very challenging year. I don't think that any of us could have anticipated the speed at which change occurred within this organization. Much faster than I've seen in other cities. So it's been challenging. With that challenge, I want to say we're fortunate. We find ourselves on the ground floor. We have the opportunity to create.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Ryan?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Darn, he was just getting to the optimistic part.
Yeah.
I will try to reach him.
Okay, thanks, Tammy.
All right, well, then we'll just move along and hope that he comes back. And Sarah, do you want to take up where he sort of left off to continue the discussion? Thanks.
Hey, Tammy, will you call Ryan? He's trying to call me right now.
Yeah, I'll call him.
Okay, thanks. Okay, let me go ahead and, because I have the same presentation all queued up, I will share my screen. All right, can everybody see this? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so picking up where Ryan left off, talking about opportunities. Again, you know, lots of challenges that we face this year, both as a city and as, you know, a global society. So really, for the city of Mercer Island, a lot of what we're trying to think about are the opportunities. Ryan mentioned we're kind of on the ground floor in terms of the Parks and Recreation Department. This provides an opportunity to really rebuild. That rebuilding will take time. It's not going to happen overnight, as will you know, any other essential services that we need to bring back online. But we're really, you know, looking at the positives in this situation, making sure that we have, from an organization standpoint, the right staff on hand, the right resources and the right support from council as well as our boards and commissions to move forward. But it's really a good time to kind of evaluate what we were doing before and really galvanize support again for where we're going. So that's kind of like the high level. I have kind of broken down in ways that we envision this will really impact the Arts Council and the work that you maybe had planned, not only for this year, but going forward. But do you all have any questions just from kind of a high level organizational standpoint about anything that Ryan shared in terms of the org charts and the budget?
I just, I guess from the reorg, it looks like that going forward, the Arts Council won't necessarily be umbrellaed under Parks and Rec anymore. Is that correct? We're going to be under the Public Works?
So I think it's still unclear where some boards and commissions will live. You know, we have within Parks and Recreation, there were three boards, so Arts Council, Open Space Conservancy, and the Parks and Rec Commission. So the other two kind of have a place under the Public Works Operations Department pretty easily based on the staff who are still employed and who've been absorbed into that structure. But Arts Council kind of depends on where the budget goes, where the org chart goes, and then kind of what staff capacity, what resources are available. So right now it's kind of to be determined. That's definitely something that we will update you all on as soon as possible. Oh, Ryan's back. Oh, you're on mute though, Ryan.
I'm on my phone now too. My computer decided now was the best time to reload everything and update. So it's almost done. Thank you for picking up, Sarah. I appreciate that. I will continue to. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Ryan, you might be able to speak to Erin's question a little more clearly. She had asked about where the Arts Council will live, whether it's under Public Works or, you know, what that looks like. And I was just sort of saying it really depends on where the staff resources shake out with the org chart and the budget.
That's exactly right. Right now, there hasn't been talk. We have a number of boards and commissions that are sort of up in the air. Actually, they're all within Parks and Recreation. So we will be discussing once a budget is passed and a finalized organizational structure is set, then we'll know where these boards and commissions fall. Obviously, the Arts Council as well as the Parks and Rec Commission. The positions that previously were liaisons to each of those don't exist anymore. So we're going to have to get some direction from the city manager as to what that looks like and where those boards and commissions will live. So that's sort of a wait and see answer, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I think Suzanne has a question.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, arts are very important in our community. How do we advocate to be supported? I don't want to sit and wait. I mean, the city council has so many very, very important things, police, fire, all those things on their radar. How do we get on their radar as well? I mean, I don't think it's a good idea to just wait and see what crumbs are left over.
Great point. And I think that's an excellent question. I think the starting place is with our council liaison, Salim Neese. That's going to be the first place we need to start. I would also say that as we move forward, so looking at that the operations transition team, that's really going to help lay the framework, I believe, as we move forward. So as I mentioned, this is sort of a proposed organizational structure to start January 1. I anticipate as we start growing the budget or creating opportunities for expansion, that's when we'll start putting things forward. So I would start with our council liaison, and then we would work from there. And I think the other part of that is, I'll say this is another very fortunate situation to have Sarah and I currently on staff in an aspect. I think that that really helps to continue the work that had been done in the past.
Thanks, Ryan. Does anyone else have a question about the org chart? Suzanne, I'm guessing your hand is raised because you haven't lowered it. I guess a follow-up question to that is, will we be having meetings regularly from now on?
So that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So I can actually, let's see, go ahead and share my screen again and we can keep moving. So what does it mean for the Arts Council, all of this? I anticipate it means reduced meeting frequency, in large part because a lot of what you all were working on pre-pandemic was programming and events related. We were starting to get into some more long-term planning. You know, I think we were all pretty excited after the retreat back in February to break off and start doing some real strategizing. So that program, you know, that element can certainly continue in some capacity going forward, but I do anticipate, just based on current staff resources, that you would probably be meeting less, and maybe even on an as needed basis to start. So for instance, you know, part of the reason I had asked to reconvene you all in this month and then next month is because there's some public art related projects that I need you all to weigh in on, because they potentially impact other departments, in particular community planning and development. So some things like that where it may be driven by staff reaching out to the Arts Council to provide input for projects. But we can certainly, you know, talk more about that if a quarterly meeting schedule works for you all, or trying to meet more frequently. But really, yeah, it will depend on, again, what the staff resources are. You at least you've got me until in November as well, so we'll get some things done then too, and then maybe we'll have some more concrete information about what the first of the year can look like too. Kind of along those same lines, I already mentioned this, so we'll have a continued pause in arts programming, and that's in large part based, again, on resources, but also with the pandemic, knowing that, you know, events, large gatherings, things like concert series and gallery exhibits and gallery events aren't necessarily something that the city can support right now. Also knowing that the community center was one of your prime venues for programming. And as you heard Ryan talk about, where, you know, there will be a whole transition plan, a recovery plan for bringing the community center back online. But it does give you an opportunity in the same way that, you know, as a city, we're starting to think more about what's the big picture, what's the vision, where do we go from here? This gives you, the Arts Council, the opportunity to weigh in on that conversation as well, particularly from an arts perspective. Obviously, we did the community survey last fall, which started providing some input about what community members want to see in terms of arts programming. But really, you know, this is a chance for you all to kind of, I think, take a pause and really look forward of what the next couple of years could look like, and put some maybe new focus and priorities in place. And I think there's still a lot of ways to be able to stay engaged. So there's the city support side. So Suzanne, your question was great. Kind of how do you advocate for the arts? How do you stand up and be participating in the conversation instead of waiting to be told what's going to happen? A big process that you all should be paying attention to is the 2021-2022 budget process. So the org chart and all the information that Ryan shared is part of that process. Presentation started last night and will continue. The next presentation is next Tuesday. And actually, if you all are able to tune into that or watch it later, that's when the kind of meat of the major org changes and budget changes will be discussed, including the changes to community planning and development department, as well as the kind of quote unquote operations division, including public works and parks and rec. So it would be really great for you all to kind of chime in or tune into those conversations and hear what city council is saying, where their priorities are landing in terms of some of those new org charts. The other thing is that we still have essential city projects going on. The Luther Burbank Docks is a big project that's been moving forward. There's a public art component to that, knowing that there's already works of public art down at the docks, but there's also opportunity to reimagine the waterfront as a gathering place as part of that project. So you can still participate in that. There is a possibility that we'll be restarting the pros plan process, which, if you recall, back in January, seems like forever ago now, the pros plan consultant came and presented to you all in collaboration with the Parks and Rec Commission. There's definitely, while the process or plan may be scaled back from what we originally envisioned pre-pandemic, there's still an opportunity for our arts and culture to be a piece of that. And then this kind of Parks and Recreation Recovery Plan, which Ryan alluded to before, the transition team that would really focus on the community center and the thrift shop to start, but at some point we'll need to rebuild the recreation program. And there's definitely, room for the Arts Council to participate in that. On very specific arts and culture needs, again, this is a good opportunity to really maybe recommit to some of those long range visioning and arts advocacy work you all were starting. So Arts Council priorities, talking about, we talked a lot about demonstrating the community and economic impact of the arts. I think Erin and Suzanne and Amy have all been involved with some conversations and work that I've been doing in my EOC role with local businesses to drive some of that recognition and demonstration. And then, public art planning is something that's always on the docket, and there's work that can be done there, all things that can be done kind of remotely and without the need for public facing events and activities to start. So there are ways you can continue the work that you were already doing kind of in the background as the city continues to rebuild. And then a big thing, Ryan mentioned way back when we were talking about essential services, and in terms of park essential services, really maintaining our assets. And I really don't want it to get lost that a major asset of the city is the public art collection. There have been many conversations in the past, and since I've been involved with the Arts Council, about showcasing the public art collection in new ways, reconnecting the community to the public art collection. You all have, you are stewards of a very valuable collection of art, and there's a great opportunity here to use what you already have to maintain and strengthen the community's connection with the arts. One very minor thing that I know Erin did on her own and remotely was updating Story, which is the digital platform that you all have. So there's a lot of room for growth in building that platform out and promoting it as another way for community members to connect with the arts while they're staying safe and staying healthy. And then again, this idea of kind of COVID-19 support for local businesses. So I admit this is kind of one of my ways to stay, for me personally, to stay involved with arts and culture and the public art collection. been doing a lot of work trying to incorporate, you know, the outdoor gallery and the public art that's in town center. How do we activate that and give community members a reason to return to town center, and by way of returning to town center, also supporting local businesses. So there again is that community and economic impact action that people can actually start to see, rather than, you know, going back around and around circles, telling people how important the arts are for economic impact. Maybe right now we have a really good opportunity to demonstrate that. So those are just some things that I want you all to think about. I think that obviously, Erin mentioned this at the beginning in her welcome. This pandemic has thrown everyone for a loop in different ways. It's impacted everyone. You know, people are teaching their kids at home. People are getting used to working remotely. People are looking for new jobs and everything. So I think that you all are an all volunteer board. You've always been used to being a working board. You've been very active in doing events and programming. But it is okay right now to scale back from those kinds of things. You know, we want to make sure that you all are taking care of yourselves and your family, and we want you to stay engaged in the ways that work best for you. So I kind of encourage you all, again, this is kind of a pause where you can use it as an opportunity, and if any of these things are really standing out to you, I'm happy to talk with you more about them. Like Ryan mentioned, our positions are only guaranteed through the end of the year, so I can't guarantee that I will be here in January to help carry on the torch, but I will say that there's a lot of ways to kind of continue on the programming or continue in the advocacy work that you all were doing, even though we've kind of hit a little bit of a bump in the road with the pandemic.
Hey,
so
Sarah.
Really, yeah.
This is Ryan. Could you go back one slide for me?
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, and kind of going back to Suzanne's question. One of the biggest items on that list is the Parks and Recreation Recovery Plan. I just want to make sure that this council understands they're going to be vital to that planning process. This isn't going to be, or I would assume whoever's leading that process, I will be a strong advocate that it's not a staff-driven exercise. It's the different boards and commissions that we have, and that's going to be, that's going to be the biggest way to engage, to help lay out the framework of what the future looks like for the recreation division, which I would assume will encompass the arts and culture components. So what?
I have a question about that before you go on, Ryan, just because I'm going to forget it if I don't ask it now, because it's a kind of a follow-up question to what Sarah was talking about. But with what you were saying, I wonder if this is not a good opportunity to sort of try to shift our understanding of what our focus is with arts and culture on the island. And as I think a lot of us acknowledge on the council, that the economic vitality and cultural vitality of communities are interlinked. And there's my dog. Sorry.
At least your computer didn't restart in the middle of your sentence.
Sorry, I think we have food delivery. I think somebody's gonna get the dog. He's a ferocious poodle. So can you all hear me okay over the barking dog?
You might want to wait a second, Erin, and we'll come back to it, just for the recording quality.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Just wondering, like other cities like Bellevue has done, if this would be an opportunity for us to take the Arts Council and move it under, I think there was a proposed economic development coordinator position that's being developed, and our city hasn't really had sort of an economic development position or group, I think. Would this be a time to sort of look at moving our council into that framework?
I think the key word you used at the beginning was opportunity. And I do see that as a real opportunity to put those positions together, or to have that be a location for the Arts Council. As we mentioned, the Arts Council is really unique in the variety of departments that that you could live in. So I do think there's opportunity, and that's where discussions amongst Arts Council members and the community will be extremely important to make sure that the right home is advocated for and found.
Okay, thank you. I think Gayleen has a question. Thank you for patiently waiting.
So what this is bringing to mind for me is that we cannot be the only arts council in, even if you just look at the East Side communities. And I'm wondering whether there isn't an opportunity to reach out to some of the other art councils and have a discussion of what their planning looks like, what their situation looks like, and see whether we could learn from some things that other communities are doing.
I think Sarah has been to a few of the For Culture local arts agency meetings throughout this. I know I was attending some, and yeah, that's a good point, Gayleen. At the beginning of the pandemic, the cultural community in the region really came together because there's some definite struggles and challenges that they're uniquely facing. And there is an East Side, Sarah, help me remember, it's the East Side Arts Coalition.
Yeah, I think it's called the East Side Arts Coalition. So it's a group of, I think like LAAs and volunteers and arts organizations, arts centers that have been meeting semi-regularly to talk about the pandemic and impacts and getting support and everything like that. And I think it unfortunately falls at the same time on Friday mornings that Ryan and I have our wonderful Emergency Operations Center morning briefing each week. So I haven't been able to attend, but I think it would be wonderful, even if it's just occasional, that an Arts Council member joins into that. I'm happy, or Erin, one of us is happy to send out the link and information.
I absolutely think that would be great. I was attending it regularly up until about June, and I would love for a member. I right now don't know if I can continue to do that with homeschooling, but I think it's a really great opportunity to stay connected and learn what the region is doing. So Gayleen, you might want to join those meetings.
I actually really would like to. I just would need to know in advance so I can block the time off of work.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send out after this meeting, kind of as a follow-up, I'll send out that information, as well as Erin mentioned the For Culture local arts agency network. So prior to the pandemic, again, we were going, those meetings take place every other month. We were going to those very regularly, and I've been to a couple virtual ones so far. That's mostly with people who are like my counterpart in other organizations, or what I formerly was the arts and culture coordinator, staff liaisons to arts councils, as well as people such as yourselves, volunteer board members, chairs, and all of that. So that's another good resource too, that I'll include to remind you all about. And one thing, I didn't include this in a slide, but one thing to remember is that you all have access to Americans for the Arts. We have a membership through the organization, and I have really valued the resources that they're sending out right now. Every week, through the Public Art Network listserv, they're sending out a listing of resources related to COVID-19 and resources related to Black Lives Matter and social justice issues. They're also sending out resources related to equity, justice through the local arts network too. So that's another great opportunity to connect. That's more regionally and nationally, but that's a good one as well. And if anyone doesn't remember how to access their Americans for the Arts account or anything like that, I'm happy to get you all set up with that again.
Thanks, Sarah. And just to maybe try to answer Galen's question more directly, have you heard of any other arts councils in the region that have taken a pause like us, or have people been operating normally through this?
You know, we talked earlier on in some of the LAA meetings I was on, talking about what the budget impacts were. I know like the city of Issaquah is facing a major budget issue, but at the time they hadn't laid off any art staff or anything like that. Same issue in Bothell. They went through layoffs, but they were able to maintain their arts coordinator. So really, I haven't heard too much. You know, we connected with some other arts agencies that were pivoting to do, you know, drive-in theater kind of programming, and other arts activities, virtual arts activities and everything. So I haven't really heard about anyone that's kind of folded or anything like that. I'm seeing some regional public art projects going forward still, more on the national level than regionally, but.
I would just add to that, Sarah, that a lot of cities are currently in the budget conversation for the upcoming years. Mercer Island acted very quickly in how we address this pandemic. Other cities kind of rode out the year and are making some changes as they go forward. So I believe that question is probably coming up through budget discussions right now with a number of different cities.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do y'all have any other questions? Okay.
I don't see anyone's virtual hands raised, but I want to give everybody the opportunity to comment. It seems like we've sort of segued into the third item of business, right? That we're starting to talk about how we can stay engaged, or do you have, okay, so do you have more to present to us on that, or?
No, and I think it's a good segue into kind of the last item of business. So I mentioned part of the reason I called this meeting is because there's some public art related needs that I need you all to weigh in on. Originally, I hoped to do that conversation at this meeting, but we got extended into 2 meetings because it was too hefty of a conversation to do both the operations update and the public art conversation. So I'm just gonna preview kind of what we need to talk about in November, and then if we can schedule your November meeting, because right now your regular meeting is scheduled for Veterans Day, and as staff we've requested that we meet on a different evening. So before the end of the meeting tonight, we'll schedule that. But just to give you guys kind of a quick overview of where we're going. Okay, so before the pandemic and through the course of the pandemic, there have been a few conversations and requests or inquiries that have come my way related to public art. Some of these may be new to everyone. Some of these things you may be familiar with. So I'm just giving you kind of a very quick snippet of what we're going to need to talk about next month. In between now and the November meeting, I will provide you all of the information that you need related to each of these items. I just kind of wanted to preview them for you now. So the first thing is actually something that Amy worked on before the pandemic. I don't know if you all know Ron Reeder. He was a longtime island resident and member of MyVol. He passed away last year. And MyVol requested to donate a work by Ron to the city. So before the pandemic, we were in the process of kind of going through our donation policy, and we would have brought that request to the Arts Council probably in March of this year. So that's one thing that we'll want to review. They have, MyVol has selected 5 different works of art that they would like to consider. They're interested in trying to donate the work of art to be displayed at the library. So there are a few things that we need to work through from a process standpoint in order to accept that donation, but you'll get all the information for that prior to the November meeting. The next 2 issues are ones I kind of mentioned related to the Community Planning and Development Department. So there's a proposed mixed-use development in Town Center. I think it's called the King property. It's across from Met Market. And the development, as part of their public benefit, they're adding a couple different plazas around the development, and they would like to include artwork. So generally, we don't necessarily have an established process for art being added to private development, but through kind of consistent conversations with the Community Planning and Development Department, and based on kind of precedent of Arts Council's involvement, we've been able to remain top of mind with them. So the developers for this development, they're very interested in either purchasing a work of art from the outdoor gallery or reciting an existing work of art. So I will have more details to share about that. And then if you're familiar with other town center developments or projects going on right now, you know that the Farmers Insurance building was purchased, and the developers are working on renovating the building. And one of the oldest works of art in the city's public art collection, the sculpture Fireflower by Giselle Berman, is currently installed in the plaza outside of the Farmers Insurance building. The developers would like to relocate it to a different location on the property. You have a couple opportunities here. You could take them up on reciting it somewhere on their property, or we could potentially find a different location somewhere in the city to recite it as well. So again, that'll be kind of in the packet of public art decision making that I provide to you all. And then the last thing is just some public art maintenance. So you may remember that we do public art maintenance every year, just routine maintenance on kind of pretty specific group of works of art. So we will need to do that this year or going into 2021 to stay on top of things, especially knowing like we mentioned before, how valuable these assets are. And then there are a couple of works of art that have sustained some damage during the pandemic. One work of art, you can see it here, it's called Now We Are One. I think it's installed in, it might be First Hill Park, or it was, the base was starting to basically break. So we had to remove the entire sculpture, and it's in storage right now. Also, a couple weeks ago, or maybe even a week ago, those who have been on the Arts Council for a long time know that the gateway is prone to damage, and we had an accident with one of the gateway figures. So I think there was a car that came off the off ramp and ran into one of our precious figures at the gateway. So not Sound Transit's fault at all. And they did, when they saw that it happened, they called us immediately to make sure, see if there was a police report filed and everything. So they were on top of it. But that's something else that we need to figure out what to do with it. So those are some meaty topics. There will be more information I have to share with you about all of them. So look for that in your email. If you have questions or want to have more conversations about any of these things once you receive the information, I'm happy to chat with everyone. The 2 projects related to private development, we want to make sure we act on those because there's permitting processes already starting to get underway for those projects. So the sooner we are able to kind of either give an okay or help determine a different plan for public art in those areas, the more smoothly the permitting processes can go. The public art maintenance can happen as needed and on kind of our own time, and it's funded through the 1% for the Arts Fund. And the donation from MyVol is also something that can kind of happen on your own time. I know that MyVol is very interested still in making it happen, but it's not as big of a priority in terms of a timing perspective as the two private development projects. So I will stop sharing my screen again. Does anybody have any questions about those or anything else?
Looks like Gayleen does.
Yeah, I still have.
Oh, you're on mute, Gayleen.
I had my space bar down. I guess I didn't do it right. When you send out that information, can you also send out like a current budget? So what kind of funding we have at this point?
That is a good question. So yes, I will. Know that, so as you might recall, you have the operating budget, and then, which was about $40,000, and then the 1% for the art program. The operating budget was part of the Parks and Recreation Department budget, which was essentially zeroed out during, and Ryan, if Ryan's still on the call, I don't think he is. It was essentially zeroed out earlier in the year when we had layoffs. And so currently the Arts Council has no operating budget. And that, again, that budget covered like programs, events, all of that. There was a little bit of public art related money in that, mostly for signage. But really right now, the only funding we have to work from is the 1% program, which is restricted, as you know. So that is another thing that, as you're following along in the budget process or advocating to your city council liaisons, you can mention, you know, what would it take, kind of what's the flavor on bringing back an operating budget for the Arts Council. Any other questions?
I think Shishi was next, and then Anna Meha.
I have a question regarding the private development public art project for Xinhua Development. They're interested in either buying or reciting a piece of work from the outdoor gallery. What is the city's position on that? Do we have a preference? What's the best in the interest of the city? You know, because I'm assuming reciting, meaning they'll just take one piece of art from our gallery and move it, right? Whereas buying, they'll own it, but that's also for the public to view. So there'll be some revenue generated from that.
Yeah, ideally, because there are probably 10 or 12 works of art for sale in the gallery right now, it would be great if they purchased a work of art, and because that would be, like you said, a revenue stream for the city. It's really up to you all ultimately. I connected with the developers, and I'll share kind of all the conversation and all the information I shared with them as well in the packet that I sent to you all. But I connected with the developers, I think back in April, and basically provided several different options for them. So they could purchase a work of art from the gallery and install it. They could seek the Arts Council's permission to recite a current work of public art, or they could commission an artist and have the Arts Council work with them on that. They weren't interested in commissioning a new work of art. They were interested in either purchasing a work of art or moving a piece or pieces. Since I've talked with them, I believe they were leaning towards, if they moved a work of art, an existing piece in the collection, they were interested in The Bench and Chaise by John Hoge, which, and I told this to them, it would share with you all that those works of art were donated by local business owners from town centers. So there may be, we would have to go back and look in the public art record and the provenance, because there may have been very specific reasons that the works of art were installed there. So that might be, that's probably a non-starter. And I shared that information with them. So there's a couple of things like that that we can talk through more.
Sorry, quick question on that. Is that how Fire Flower ended up on the farmer's insurance property, even though it's part of our collection, or?
I'm actually not sure, because there isn't a ton of information in the Fire Flower public art record. I know that it was purchased and donated in large part by Myval. I'll be honest, I don't have enough in our records to know why it ended up in the location that it ended up at.
Okay. Shishi, is that helpful? Okay. Anameha.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Shishi, do you have a follow-up question?
I do have a follow-up question. This may be immature to talk about at this meeting, but if the Xinhua development ended up wanting to, instead of buying, they want a resiting, maybe we could just ask them if they want to take the Fire Flower, and then therefore there's just one move, instead of moving yet another piece from the outdoor gallery and moving the other piece back and trying to find a location for it. That it's probably too early to talk about that here.
Mm-hmm. That is a possibility, and with resiting, it falls on the developers to pay for all of that. So that is one thing to keep in mind. We would require, if Xinhua or if Ryan Companies wants to move Fire Flower and we agree on a location, they would have to cover all of the costs. But yeah, I thought about that as well. It would be easier to just move from one location to another, but there's an opportunity to learn a little more about what each developer is doing with each of those spaces and what might complement it from an arts perspective.
I have a comment on that, but I'll save it. Anameha, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Why are they interested in the public art? Like, do you know?
So in the Town Center Development Code, if you ever want to read through it, I'm happy to provide you the code numbers. But public art, or art, in particular sculpture, falls as part of a minor public benefit. So private developments are required to meet a couple of different types of public benefits. They can do kind of a major public benefit, and I believe, so don't totally quote me on this, but I believe a major public benefit would be a plaza area, and then a minor public benefit would be a work of art. With Xinhua in particular, when they released some kind of preliminary designs, I think it was last year, when they were going through some commission processes, and they had shown that there were sculptures, works of art, kind of included in a couple areas in their proposed plazas. And so I reached out to our planning department and got connected with the developers to talk about that. While again, there isn't really a codified process for the Arts Council to approve those works of art, it is kind of a good faith thing at this point to involve the Arts Council in those discussions. So we saw that pre-me, I don't know if anyone was here for it, but several years ago, there was a development in Town Center that I think kind of butts up to the outdoor gallery, and the developers wanted to install a fountain, and the Arts Council was able to get involved and kind of review that, and it ended up the developers, instead of installing this fountain, they ended up purchasing a work of art from the gallery. I think they were the ones who purchased the gnome group 3, the 3 kind of little guys that are at the gateway. So there's some precedent for it, although we don't, like I said, we don't really have like an established process. It's more staying on top of it at this point.
So do you think this would be an opportunity for us to think about, developing the art districts that we have always long desired for, that any new private development offers some sort of, space for arts and culture? Like it could be like, one like a shop area, or, leasing out, or like selling it or donating it to the city, or, a nonprofit where they can run these arts and culture programs.
I think that's a great idea. I would say a first way to kind of get involved with that concept, or maybe advocating for something like that. I know next year it will be on the Community Planning and Development Department's work plan to look at town center codes, and there's been some conversation about that during the pandemic already. In very specific cases, but I know it's something that they're looking at. So that could be a great opportunity to kind of get involved and hear what they're working on from a town center perspective. There's some economic development impacts in that as well. So I think if there is an economic development coordinator position that's funded, that's a possibility that, something like that could be not on the work plan right away, because I think some of those sort of long-term changes will take a while, especially knowing that we'll be kind of in pandemic recovery for a while. But yeah, I definitely think there's opportunity in that space.
Okay, I see Galen's hand raised, and before I call on you, that's a weird term. Sarah, I'm just wondering, for that particular development, is there a timeline, or can we continue this discussion safely at our November meeting, or do we need to make any fast decisions on that for that particular development question?
Nope, we don't need to make any fast decisions tonight. The November meeting will really be focused on all of those public art related conversations, with the 2 private development related conversations being the priority, since they are time sensitive, but we're still within kind of the window that we need to be within.
So they're not so time sensitive that we'll miss out on anything by waiting till November. Okay.
No, we won't.
I'll save my comments for then.
Okay.
Galen.
Just a quick question. Could you, when you say minor and major, are there dollar amounts associated with that? So like, is a developer required to spend a particular amount of dollars in order to meet those?
I'm actually not sure how that is qualified. I am not a town center code expert by any means, but I can definitely look into
If
that
I remember
a little more.
Correctly, that it's mainly like a number. You have to meet a certain number of
types of benefits,
public
basically
benefits, right? So I don't know if they're necessarily called major or minor, but they're lists of, you must have 2 of these public amenities and choose between 3 of these 5 as well. I think that's.
If you feel like it will be helpful for the conversation in November, I am happy to dig into more about those specific codes and let you all know, give you some more context. Okay.
Yes, please.
Yep, great. What else?
Okay, does anyone else have any comments? Since we have next meeting to talk about the public art issues, just before we end, do we have any more comments or thoughts about sort of this new position we're in? Probably in the history of the Arts Council of Mercer Island, we're in this sort of like rebuilding phase, right? I mean, we have no budget, and we're sort of unclear as where we're going to sit within city organization. What should we be doing to team up together in the next couple months to really advocate as a team for our goals? I think Suzanne, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the only thought that occurs to me is I want to see if we can keep the ball rolling forward, and if we can form into little groups that are not quorums that look after something that we identify that we want to keep moving forward. I think that's what we have to do. I mean, we have to step. I mean, I appreciate that thought that, you know, if you're not up for it for whatever reason, but I'm up for it. You know, I don't have that much going on, so I would love to, you know, keep. I don't want to just go stagnant and then say 2 years from now, say, oh, let's start doing something. I think this is really a great opportunity. And I think, you know, Erin, you and I have talked a little bit, our community needs this. They need us to bring, you know, I don't know whether it's piped in music that plays on sidewalks, you know, I mean, it's some things that are very simple, but I was in a location the other day that there was just a violin speaker, you know, playing, and it was just a pleasant thing. I mean, I kind of looked around and heard some music, and it was lovely. And it didn't impact safety or security or cost or anything. It was just the smallest little thing. So I think if we identify those little small things that we can keep moving forward, I think it would be really meaningful to us personally and to our community.
I agree, Suzanne. This is Erin speaking again. I was thinking about it, I don't know, last night. You know, it was Indigenous Peoples Day, and my kids were talking about it at school, and I was thinking about Mercer Island, and I might be wrong. I've only lived here 6 years, but I think there's the old belief that the Native Americans who were here before us didn't actually live on the land. They came here to hunt, but they believed that because of the mist that the island would sink underwater at night, so they left. And I was thinking about how Mercer Island sort of like sunk again, you know, we're kind of went underwater a little bit. This is a new place for us, and I think it's really important for the community, for us in particular, to find little ways to sort of lift us back out, right? I mean, there's a lot of darkness going on, and we're here, we have some energy, and there are, like you said, Suzanne, some little things we can do to bring smiles back, I guess. I don't know. So does anyone else have any thoughts? I mean, there's nothing specific of what I was thinking, but you know, I'd hate to see our group just sort of fade away also.
I guess one request maybe I have as a staff person is just, you know, I think there throughout the last 8 or 9 months, I know I've talked with some of you throughout, I've talked with some of you more than others, you know, met with some of you and everything, but I just kind of getting back to that idea of like, I want to meet you all where you are right now, and knowing that our staff resources are limited and maybe uncertain to some extent. If you all, and you don't need to do it here, you can reach out to me, or reach out to Erin and Amy as your chair and vice chair, and just kind of maybe provide a little information about how you want to be involved. You know, no, I'm certainly not going to fault anyone who is like, I can't, you know, what Suzanne's talking about sounds crazy to me. I don't have time to keep the ball moving. But if you are really willing to kind of re-engage, I know it's been a while since we've all been able to get together, but you know, I don't want to bother anyone with the things that I'm working on if you all don't have time or don't have interest. But if you do, and you want to stay engaged, I think the fact that you all are here tonight at the meeting hopefully means you want to stay engaged. But please just don't hesitate to reach out and let me or let Erin and Amy know about you know, what you think that will look like for you over the next few months.
Yeah, and we definitely want to be conscious of the limited staff resources right now, for sure. And I think something that we could think about doing is there are a lot of groups on the island, the PTA for one, and there are people sort of thinking of the same things right now. So while you're out in your other groups and things you're affiliated with, keep an ear to the ground of what other people are doing, and we can collaborate and consolidate efforts and I think be more efficient that way.
Well, should we schedule your November meeting?
Yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to add or questions? Okay, then I guess our last item of business is to schedule the November virtual meeting. The regular meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, November 11th. However, that's Veterans Day, as Sarah mentioned. So staff has proposed 3 meeting dates and times. The first one is Wednesday, November 4th. The second is Tuesday, November 10th. And the third is Thursday, November 12th. So does anyone have any thoughts or preferences, or are definitely available or unavailable for any of those dates?
I prefer, and I'm available on November 4th.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite hear.
November 4th is my preference. This is Anumeha.
Okay. That's funny because I thought that was a terrible day to do a meeting. I don't know. People tend to be a little shell-shocked on the days after presidential elections lately.
Oh, that's right. Cece Shakes, I could do November 12th or the 4th and prefer the 12th.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just say I prefer either the 10th or the 12th as well. Sarah, are you taking notes on who's?
I am.
Okay. So,
So really quickly though, Andrea, who is kind of in the background right now helping us with the tech stuff, she mentioned that there's a planning commission meeting on November 12th. So we try not to schedule meetings, 2 commission meetings on the same night. So maybe we'll take November 12th off the table. Sorry.
okay.
And these are just those are just proposed dates. If there's a different date outside of that time that will work for everyone, that is fine too.
The 10th would be fine for me. I mean, I could make anything work, but the 10th would be great.
Okay.
That was Gayleen, right?
Yep.
Cece here again. I just checked. I can make November 10th work as well.
Okay.
This is Amy, and November 10th is fine.
Okay. It looks like Suzanne's giving a thumbs up for November 10th. And so is Eric. Great. The other thing, so one thing with the city council meetings that we've been doing, they've been starting them earlier in the evenings in this virtual format. So your regularly scheduled meetings started at 6:30. So we started tonight at 6:30. Is that still the preferred time for everyone? Is later better, or we could try earlier? Just want to get a pulse on what you all prefer. Doesn't matter.
I could do slightly earlier on a Tuesday, but you know, I defer to what is more convenient to everyone else, people that are working.
Yeah, I prefer 6:30 because that gives me some break between work.
Okay. Okay. Well, if there's no major push for a 5 p.m. meeting or anything like that, let's plan on 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, November 10th.
Okay, great. So the next meeting will be Tuesday the 10th. And now I will ask if there is any other business to discuss or items to report before we close the meeting. Okay, I don't see any. All right, there being no other business to come before the Arts Council, the time is now 8:02. And the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to the board members, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.